Hi, everyone, and good morning. Today, we are a group of individuals who are members of the Agribusiness Market Ecosystem Alliance, which is called AMEA. And we have been working on a collaborative research project in Kenya that's going to help farmer organizations chart a digital path towards professionalization of their businesses, but also greater inclusion of marginalized rural communities and many other different opportunities for women and youth to engage in agriculture. So as we begin, I want to give an opportunity to my co-presenters to introduce themselves as well today. Merceline, would you like to go first?
Yes, thank you, Casey. Can you hear me clearly?
Loud and clear.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Marceline Oyer, Country Manager, Coded Kenya. Coded Kenya is the host organization for AMEA, supporting about 12 network members within the country. Thank you, and over to you.
Great, thanks, Merceline. Dr. Akuku, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Yes, can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so I'm Boniface Akuku. I'm an IT expert in the ag sector. For the last 10 years, I've been working at the Kenya Agriculture and Livestock Research Organization. I'm on sabbatical, where currently I'm doing some consultancy with the FAO and World Bank on the digital ag space. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Akuku. And my name is Casey Harrison. I'm the Director of Impact and Learning at Nuru International. I also, because Nuru, as a collective of locally led NGOs, are members of the AMEA network, I also act as the Ag Tech Working Group lead within AMEA. So we're going to start off by just trying our best to introduce the audience to the AMEA network. This is a little bit more information. The primary goal of this network of partner organizations is to drive greater professionalization and accelerate the development of farmer organizations around the world. There's a number of ways that AMEA does this that I'll go through in just a moment. But I wanted to start off with this presentation is really focused on how can we leverage farmer organizations, cooperative agribusinesses, micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises as a conduit to reach more farmers around the world with technology. So that's the real premise of our discussion today, with a keen focus on Kenya with our experts, Merceline and Dr. Akuku. So the AMEA network itself is a group, as I said, of like-minded organizations that share this vision for farm organizations around the world. And so you can sort of see there's a wide range of international partners, including Nuru and Cordaid, who are presenting today. We also have regular engagement as a network with many other European partners, as well as those in the United States and around the world. So a little bit more information on why AMEA exists and why it's relevant to today. AMEA as a group developed through a multi-stakeholder process, an international working agreement through the ISO, International Standard Organizations process. And what we were developing at that time back in 2017, 2018 was really a common language and a common understanding for how farmer organizations could achieve measurable professionalization that would allow them to increase their access to finance and markets, would also create an opportunity for business development service providers or organizations like Nuru or Cordaid or the other members who provide services to farm organization businesses, an opportunity to hold themselves and their businesses accountable towards a shared language and a shared understanding. And so that's what the global guidelines are. And I'm introducing those now because I'm going to talk about how we're utilizing that tool, those guidelines, to also develop a roadmap for farm organization businesses to invest in technology over time without over-investing in a very complicated ag tech landscape, which was really well articulated earlier today by Beanstalk through their report on the state of the industry itself. And so the other way that AMEA operates is really, as I said, it's a multi-stakeholder network. So it's really about innovation through collaboration is the theory of change that grounds AMEA. and the relationships between partners. Another way that AMEA operates is through the leveraging and standardization of peer-reviewed tools. This includes training and coaching, as well as assessment protocols. These are not inherently digital or technological. They're methodologies that are leveraged to both assess farm organization professionalism in a standardized approach, while also leveraging training curriculum that can help farm organization and MSMEs grow towards that professional track through really identifying their growth pattern within their context. And so this is one of the ways that AMEA provides that type of support to its members, but also is aiming to help create efficiencies within the sector in terms of specifically business development services around the world. AMEA has been able, with these tools, been able to reach 10,000 farmer organizations, 3,400 input retailers, which represent membership or direct ownership of 2.5 million farmers around the world. 27% of those being women farmers of that 2.5 million over 3 years, but we've seen a progressive increase in the number of women who are reached with these tools. So really trying to drive that inclusion, which is an agenda that's shared by many of the members. And really, if you're looking for a benchmark here, looking at the D4Ag space with 26% of users of digital technology being women, it's really on par with that percentage, but there is a need for more inclusion, more intentionality, and targeting women with an opportunity, as well as youth with an opportunity to benefit from these technologies. So AMEA members, these are the countries in which they've used the tool, just to give a perspective here of the reach and the scale on a global scale or through maps, to give a better understanding of how the curriculum and assessments have been implemented in different countries. The other thing that AMEA has is these working groups I mentioned at the outset. So we're going to be speaking specifically about the Agricultural Technology Working Group and how we as a global working group work closely with local networks and really leveraging locally led expertise, which my colleagues will be providing us with in a moment once I get through my part of the presentation. So you might ask the question, this is a network of organizations focused on professionalizing farm organizations in rural communities. Why an ag tech working group? Well, clearly there's a demand. The ICTforAg conference, the proliferation of technologies around the world, the rapid growth, especially over the last 5 years, that's been articulated in today's report, but also many others beforehand, that has really driven this thinking since about 2017. There was clearly a demand from AMEA members for this type of working group to make sure that we were providing guidance and prioritization opportunities for AMEA members, but also farmer organizations to be able to identify the tools that are not just the technology that's beneficial to them, but the approaches to ensure that that technology was reaching individuals in rural areas, and really looking at bridging that digital divide that has been articulated both in terms of the connectivity of rural areas, but also in terms of the digital literacy and computer skills that maybe have not been offered as an opportunity or a meaningful choice to local rural communities in different countries. So the approach was to drive innovation through collaboration. And I mentioned my organization, the New Rural Collective here, founded in 2008, because we're really looking at an opportunity to leverage digital technology to overcome barriers to adoption in some of the more remote rural areas of different countries we work in. New Rural works in Kenya, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Burkina Faso. And our goal is to utilize technology, to be a technology partner, not a technology developer, but a partner to implement on the ground with farmers in specific value chains like soybeans and groundnuts and dairy and others, to make sure that technology is reaching these communities, and also those communities are being given an opportunity to understand how it fits into their business models in a rural area. And the pictures on the right-hand side are some of those efforts we've made to bridge that gap in rural Ethiopia. So an ag tech roadmap, what is that? Why are we charting this path towards professional farm organizations using digital tools? I mean, the goal of this, this final set of guidelines is going to be to provide consistent and targeted guidance to the farm organizations, but also the business development service providers, the AMEA members, and many others who are like-minded and might be interested in joining AMEA or engaging in AMEA's work, and really helping to prioritize technology for investment. Right? Because there are limited resources, especially when you're an MSME. I think our previous breakout group that I was listening in on was having the same conversation. it's difficult to identify how to spend those limited resources when you have very thin net positive margins as a business in what technology. And so helping farm organizations at different segments or different points on their growth journey be able to identify the right investment for them is part of what BDS is trying to evolve into, or business development services. And so this roadmap is intended to provide some guidance in that direction and really a common language. So similar to why we have IWA 29, right? As I said at the outset, what we have done is we've mapped IWA 29 to technology use cases, very similar to advisory extension, market linkages, supply chain management, financial access, agricultural intelligence, and we've mapped those back against the IWA key performance areas that are outlined in IWA 29. And so the aim here is to be able to say, if you're going to invest in an ERP tool, or you're going to invest in a weather service app, does that fit in your business model? And should you invest in that sooner or later, depending on where you are in your journey? Are you a nascent or startup business? Are you an advanced business? Different investments are appropriate for different points in that growth journey. And just to make one last point there, the AgTech roadmap is not going to recommend specific technologies, but rather it's going to support the prioritization of technology costs and to identify bundles of technologies that could be cost effective for these businesses to invest in. So last point from me here, this is a concept that has been very well articulated by the International Finance Corporation in their working with smallholders handbook that they believe they recently launched their 3rd edition just a few weeks ago. This concept of segmentation of farmer organizations, or MSMEs, for basically ag advisory services or business development services, so that you can prioritize the effort and not overwhelm the businesses with too much information or too many opportunities, and create that paralysis of decision making. It's about targeting it at a segmented group at a different point in their growth journey, which you see in the graph on the right-hand side from the Harvard Business Review. Obviously, businesses go through different stages of growth. And at different stages of growth, they need different investments in technology. And that's what this roadmap intends to help identify specifically in Kenya. And so this is also something AMEA has a history with. We've been doing this as a collective, as a network, both in terms of the training and coaching tools that I outlined, or the curricula that I outlined earlier, as well as with the assessment tools, really targeting different segments at different points in their growth stage, or at different growth stages. And so we've categorized, for the purposes of technology consolidation and consolidating the prioritization of this guidance, we've broken the segments down into 3 groups, which were originally 5, but we've decided to simplify it because there is inherent overlap in these different points with the digital technologies available in the Kenyan marketplace. And so I'm going to pass it to Dr. Kuku at this stage to provide some overview of that landscape in Kenya, but also some of the findings from a study that the Kenya local network of AMEA had commissioned this past year. So Dr. Kuku, I'll pass it to you.
Thank you. I would basically move to explaining the digital agriculture technologies. And the first thing is to bring a global context, and then I'll come to the findings of the study we did recently. Yeah, so look at it, we are seeing that the importance of digital technology and how they are facilitating engagement in agriculture, particularly with the actors, and more important, the smallholder farmers and farmer-facing organizations. So we're seeing the role of digital technology in that place. Then we're looking at how these technologies have also been enabled as critical services, particularly around information, around products, and these have potential, or actually have improved efficiency, productivity, and income. Again, we are seeing that they are also powerful catalysts. Basically, we talk about inclusive economic and sustainable development and growth. So we are seeing digital technologies as being catalysts in this area also. Now, but for FLs, digital technologies actually enable them to manage their activities, particularly more efficiently. However, there are basically some difficulties that have been identified, and some of the priorities that actually have the right to disrupt the bundled nature of these technologies. So we're also seeing that decision makers, particularly in terms of the processes for the FAOs and other support like BDS providers, also get complicated with the way there's so many tools coming and sometimes causing confusion. Next slide. Yeah, so I'll move now to the Kenyan context. So we're moving from global to Kenya, and we are seeing that from most of the studies, so Kenya actually is regarded as one of the country that has the most robust technology enabling environment in sub-Saharan Africa, and actually is a leading destination for tech startup. These are studies from the World Bank, Delberg, many other institutions have come up with this, and it's repeatedly found the same. So we said that there are also very high level mobile penetration. Actually, over 80% of smallholder farmers own mobile phones, with 30% using mobile money for payment, which is a good sign. But what is the challenge that we said that when looking at FAOs, financial resources are actually inadequate. And this also comes with the challenge of staff shortages in terms of skill and capacity. So for FAOs, we find there's a problem there. Now, although Kenya is at a forefront in innovation in sub-Saharan Africa, in the digital agriculture business models, a more strategic vision is needed. So the sector needs some strategic vision in this case. For example, when we categorize the FAOs and provide an understanding on how to prioritize and select the digital agriculture technologies for investment and alignment, we find that we're using the National Digital Infrastructure Framework. You find that can help, but has not really helped much. Now, therefore, this need for a roadmap, which will provide a guidance to support the FAOs to transition from one architect category to another, where we find that most of them are nascent. How can they move from nascent to professional? Next slide. Now, in this, because of that problem, AMEA commissioned a study which was done by Agribusiness just to help how Kenya can get that roadmap. So the study was actually conducted in between April and June 2023, and 34 key informants were interviewed, 22 business BDSs were also interviewed, and 12 farm owners were also interviewed. This study was guided by ISO AW29, which my colleague has just talked about, and the AMEA FAO archetype, which is talking from nascent, intermediate, and to advanced. So that was the framework that guided the study. So what did the study sought to do? One is to come up with recommendations that can improve KPIs, which we saw as key performance areas. Was also to look at what are the perceived importance of tech solutions needs at each stage of the FAOs in their growth. The study also sought to look at the barriers to adopting the technologies in agriculture. And lastly, the perception of when is it suitable for the FAOs to adopt a tech solution? At what stage is it suitable for this adoption? Next slide. So just moving straight to the key findings. So number one, it was found that the FAO segmentations need to be better defined and mainstreamed nationally. So in other words, you find that there is actually no clear understanding or definition of which FAO is nascent, which one is intermediate, which one is advanced. This need for better definition. But also this needs to be mainstream because we find that not all FAOs have the same understanding, and even other actors don't have the same understanding. The second finding is that the actor demands closely linked to the BDS demand levels and categories. So we find that there is need for that linkage. Some of the common challenges across board that were found, one is this weak digital infrastructure. As much as you're saying Kenya is number one, has a very good mobile penetration. When it comes to FAOs, there's actually weak digital infrastructure in these institutions. There's also low awareness of technologies. Some of the the FAOs or actors are not aware of some of the technologies. So the understanding around this is lacking. Now, another challenge we found that most FAOs, they fear failure. So because of this fear to failure, they don't adopt. You saw earlier there's a challenge with adopting technology. So because of the fear of failure, because maybe others have failed in the past, the adoption rate is really not as it's expected. Again, there's low digital capacity in the FAOs, and weak governance structures, which also is another problem. We find that there's no clear governance when it comes to digital technologies in FAOs. And also the siloed nature of services. So most services are siloed, so there's inadequate bundle of services, so they are actually siloed in nature. So I think those are the main findings. Next. Yeah, so as we also continue the finding, and again, in terms of prioritization and guidance by the FAO segmentation, nascent, startup, and immature. So when you look at that category, we find that the digital literacy is needed to be delivered. There is need for software that can support basic record keeping. There's low cost of communication and hardware which are appropriate. On the intermediate category, what was found that technology that support the knowledge management need to be improved, and also production planning. Also, this need for market intelligence and improved weather forecasting for this category. For the advanced or the very professional, it is in the need is investing in more comprehensive and integrated softwares like ERP. There's also need for advanced accounting softwares. Next. So I think allow my colleague to basically come in, Marceline, to talk about the local network and the roadmap process. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kuku. Thank you, Casey, for laying that foundation. Maybe just to bring it to context, AMEA is a global organization, but also has networks that are really what you'd call like the action points. And so AMEA has, in terms of structure, we have the working groups, we have a global team, and then we have the local networks that are country-based and have a facilitator that coordinates the events in country. In total, up to date, we have 7 local networks, as you can see, spread through the continent. And today we are talking about the Kenyan local network, which is one of the action points where all the activities of AMEA interact with the farm organizations. Next slide. So why the local networks, or what is the benefit of these local networks? For all the work that is done at the global level, for all the work that is done at the working group level, the local networks provide space to bring this to reality. And the local network will support the development of enabling environment for the professional farm organizations, because we interact, the organizations that form the network actually interact directly with the farm organizations. The network also creates space to generate learnings and address key challenges. From the experiences of the organizations, the member organizations, we converge to generate learnings and also to address challenges together. It also creates space for collaboration and inclusive decision-making. I think Casey referred to that. The network also enables the mapping of energy points. Like when you talk about collaboration, how do you even make a decision around collaboration? So we have opportunity to map energy points where we can build synergy, and we can already identify potential areas for collaboration. So we follow these energy points and engage to now start the work around developing integrated programs or collaborative programs or processes like what we've done with the AgTech roadmap study as has been shared there. Then it is also a platform that as members of AMEA, we also engage other stakeholders. For example, the host government, if there are ministries that we are interested in, or ministry that we think can really shape our work as a local network or as AMEA, then we engage. For example, in Kenya, we have engaged effectively with the Ministry of Agriculture. We've engaged with the Ministry of, we are currently also engaging with the Ministry of Cooperative, Micro, Small, and Medium Enterprises to support policy processes and also see how we can support the improvement of the BDS ecosystem in Kenya. Next slide. So the local network was established in 2020. There are 11 active network members and 6 strategic partners. In terms of network members, we have both global members and local members. Global members are organizations that have multiple country programs, and they have programs that fit within the AMEA aspirations, and they participate in the countries as local chapters, but still have opportunity also to interact at their own global levels to share the learnings that they get from the local networks. We also have local members, which are organizations that are national in nature or local within the host country. And for that, then they have focus within Kenya, for example. And for strategic partners, we have institutions, there could be organizations, there could be institutions that also share the vision of AMEA or that we deem fit to interact with for the purposes of improving our work. Our focus areas in Kenya is one, promoting the Iowa 29, which now we are actually progressing to the international standard, and we are working very, very closely with the National Standards Bureau here, the Kenya KEBS. And then we are also working around the BDS landscape, working on a roadmap on BDS to be able just to help also as we work around AgTech roadmap, also to be able to shape the thinking and the progress around BDS ecosystem improvement. We also focus on a lot of collaboration to improve access to the right finance for the farm organizations. Generally, it is to drive improvements in the finance and active space so that we have better service provision to farm organizations, but also our great aspiration is that we come to a level that the farm organizations are also able to give improved services to their own members, and the members can also enhance their own incomes. So you can see the members, Nuru is there, we have Christian Aid, and below you can see we have the government of Kenya. I've mentioned how we interact with them. We have KENAF, which is the Kenya National Federation of Farmers. We have IFAD, amongst others. Next slide. So we are talking about the AgTech roadmap. Where did it originate from, and how far have we come? As Casey was making his presentation, I think he alluded to where this idea came from the AgTech working group. A concept came up, and how we interact with the global working groups is we have the global working groups usually convene meetings where all members participate, and when there is an idea, a local network can prioritize that idea if they find it an interesting idea for them or a priority. So in this case, an idea came and the Kenya local network considered it a priority for them to work on. So we picked up the idea and we are piloting it in Kenya. So we had the first round of consultation sometime in 2022, where we're basically exploring the uptake. I think at that point, we're just exploring the uptake and the utilization, and we realized it might not be easy to really find a pathway. So we prioritized to focus on the roadmap. And in terms of that roadmap, we also agreed that we need to establish the status, and that it is at that point that there was a request or a decision to do the study. And so we went to commission the study, June 2023, as being presented by Dr. Kuku. And where we are today is that we are going to disseminate the findings of this study in November, potentially on 22nd of November. And out of that dissemination, we want to come up with a core team that will now drive this process forward on behalf of the other members of the network as we use the network platform to feedback and also to improve the process. So in terms of our next steps is we are coming to the final, we are using this complete document to complete the document and use it as a guidance for the next steps in terms of the findings that have come up. We will be working with the core team. We will be working on the AgTech roadmap. Of course, it starts in November. We anticipate that it will run into 2024. So at the point, our projection is around October 2024 that we should have a complete AgTech roadmap. If all goes well, and then we will disseminate this to the key stakeholders in Kenya because they are the primary consumers as it was their priority. And eventually, as we do in AMEA, is also to put it on the global platform so that the other local network members can also learn from our experience. And if they find it interesting, then they can also adopt. And together, once a country pilots, then we will be able also to guide them through that pathway of going through the AgTech roadmap. The beauty is because we have piloted, our lessons will help them move faster. And that is why we convene at the global level to really share more. Next slide. So I think once that process is done, we are talking about pilot in Kenya because as AMEA, we are global. And the bigger picture is that much of this is done beyond just Kenya. So at this point, I want to hand it back to Casey to really walk us through the bigger picture as we envision it as AMEA Global. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Marceline. And thank you, Dr. Kuku, as well. I think you really put it into context as to where we are, what we're trying to do, and why this is an important endeavor. You know, just to reiterate a few points that have been made as I transition to some of the bigger picture themes and important areas of focus that this roadmap will hone in on as it moves forward in its development. You know, farmer organizations, especially cooperative businesses that are member-oriented, provide an excellent opportunity for technology service providers to reach a multitude of users, right? Through mission-driven businesses that have both economic outcomes that they prioritize, but also environmental and social responsibilities inherent to the principles of cooperatives. And even small and medium-sized enterprises offer a very similar opportunity to reach a number of customers through those last mile retail points or any number of ancillary service businesses that work with farmers in rural areas in Kenya, but also in many other countries. We've seen similar things in Ethiopia and Nigeria, as I'm sure many of you have experiences from different parts of the world as well. So it's really important to think of farmer organizations can really act as aggregators of users and distributors of benefits to many farmers. So it really can help increase that reach of technology services, which we heard earlier today is one of the biggest challenges, right? And so that limited reach needs an opportunity to be amplified and expanded. And we believe that this roadmap and farmer organizations themselves as businesses present that crucial partner that is not missing at this stage from the technology discussion, but certainly not at the forefront, and they should be. So some bigger picture themes here, just to kind of move us into the last 20 minutes or so, because we're going to solicit your input and feedback. It's good to see we have about 20 participants, so it's exciting to get some of your insights. Some of the major themes that have come out of our research through the Agribora study in Kenya, but also the multi-stakeholder process locally that Marceline outlined, is this need, this like defined need that's also been obviously a theme of this conference, but a theme of the findings in the State of the Digital Ag Sector report, is this need to promote, not just promote it, but intentionally plan for greater inclusion of women and youth in the use of technology. It is not an act that's passive. It has to be intentional from the very start of co-creation and design of activities or the writing of a proposal that will lead to that co-creation, right? So it has to be intentional. And we see this from major donors as a priority as well, helping to guide that, whether it's USAID or GIZ or non-institutional private foundation donors, that we're seeing the same type of emphasis. Secondly, to increase those numbers, right, there needs to be an increase of projects, piloting, context-specific and relevant ideas and ways of reaching farmers with the digital skills and the digital learning opportunities for computer skills training that are essential to meaningfully engaging with technology, whether it's through a smartphone, a computer, a tablet, or a feature phone. The hardware becomes important in terms of how you reach at scale, but the opportunity for people to learn through multiple interfaces becomes very important to how they bundle and leverage technology in their own way, not just in how the service reaches them as a pay-for model. And so all of these things, and including some of these pictures from my colleagues' work in Kenya, where they have a technical vocational and training college that's offering opportunities for farmers through the local NGO, Nuru Kenya, to learn how to use computers and actually rent computers to practice those skills and then gain the training to engage with things we take for granted: PowerPoint, Google Slides, Microsoft, Zoom, all these things that we all utilize in our day-to-day lives, making them accessible to people to test and learn from as their interests arise and as the need arises for their businesses. Another big theme or big picture theme that's come out of our work so far is this locally led segmentation. Dr. Akuku highlighted this. It came out very clearly in the Agribora study and research. Mainstreaming segmentation approaches has been a goal of AMEA's for some time. Marceline also mentioned the BDS roadmap, the Business Development Service roadmap, not to be confused with the Ag Tech roadmap, but really roadmap being the terminology we're using to offer a guide to the industry and to partners. Segmentation is necessary in order to efficiently deliver services. It doesn't matter if they're digital technology services or they are training and assessment services that are being provided to farmer organization businesses through development projects or through private sector initiatives as well. There's also a need to refine that segmentation and contextually make it a bit more specific, which is what the local networks are doing and will continue to do, like the work that Marceline is leading in Kenya. And then there's also this need to adapt the FO roadmap process in other areas through other local networks, like Marceline said. And that really will depend upon the grounding and details that go into the segmentation approach being locally driven. So with that, just re-highlighting the goal of the AgTech roadmap here and who the intended users are. The intended users of the AMEA AgTech roadmap are farm organization management committees and leadership, agricultural entrepreneurs of all kinds, specifically in Kenya in this case, but with our ambitions to be more broadly available in different countries. And also supporting business development service providers, whether it's for-profit or not-for-profit entities. Business development services are essential to the profitability of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises around the world so that they have opportunities to access services that might be deficient in their localities. So what we need at this stage to transition, and so Courtney, we can move and prepare the poll, which will be some open-ended short answer questions. We want to get the feedback and input of the stakeholders, which are all of you. So right now we're going to pivot to a brief poll, but it's really going to be short form answers, which should be populating on your screen now. And we want to see what your thoughts are. So we'll take a few minutes here, be on mute. I'll check in so we don't have too much dead air, and make sure you have a chance to give these some thought. As you're working through these questions, these are the guiding key informant interview questions that we leveraged for the Agribora study that Dr. Akuku presented. They were intended to gather informant information and feedback into what types of software and services or platforms. And I see there was some chat from Phil Malone, who we had previously done a webinar with at AMEA on access agriculture. Give some ideas. This is a great chance for you to start to respond to these questions, which will help drive the last 10 or 15 minutes of our discussion. We're a minute in. No one's had a chance to answer yet. That's okay. In the meantime, I'll just pause and check back in.
I can also keep it open. It looks like we have some answers coming in, but I can
Great.
keep it open through the end of the session.
Wonderful. Okay, then we have a few questions. If anyone would like to add any additional questions into the chat, feel free. Phil, I see your questions have come through. I tried to answer one of them. You know, you make a very good point. I'll just start here, and then I'll ask you, Boniface and Marceline, if you have any thoughts on this question from Phil. But I'll give my feedback first, because I wrote it up. How much will the use of local languages increase inclusion of women? So that's from Phil Malone. My response was local language and translation is a key first step to including marginalized groups of any kind who have either literacy, like semi-literacy, or haven't had other opportunities to gain access to these services. So translation into local language is key. What we've also found, though, is that blended learning approaches, so facilitated digital engagement with a tablet or a smartphone or an application, becomes vital to the adoption of either the behavior that's trying to be communicated or changed, and also increasing, again, the intentionality of including more women in that process. You see this both with digital agricultural services, but also in the health space with a lot of e-health services. It's really important to include a facilitator in that process. So having in-person plus digital blended learning opportunities becomes crucial. Dr. Kuku or Marceline, did you have anything you wanted to add to Phil's question?
Yeah, I think maybe briefly I would say that yes, local languages would increase inclusion. I think not just for women, but I think overall, because I think one of the barriers to access, use, and adoption of digital technology in agriculture's language. Of course, where you'll find that women are more disadvantaged in a particular community in terms of digital literacy level, then it will help women. But I agree, language is one of the barriers to access, yet use, and adoption of digital technology in agriculture.
Maybe just to add also, the confidence that comes with local language enables engagement and good learning. So just adding to what my colleagues are saying is from experience, we see that where we've used local language, there's a very good engagement among the marginalized segments. And most importantly, the women, because I think there's the bit of language for push, but when it comes to engagement, local language really provides a good opportunity for women to effectively engage and benefit from whatever technologies we deliver.
Thanks, Marceline and Dr. Kuku. Yeah.
I have a couple of questions.
Thanks, Courtney. Go ahead.
So can you add some more examples of why it is important to segment farmer organizations and MSMEs as it relates to the adoption of digital technology?
Yeah, no, thanks, Courtney. One of the things I was mentioning before is when we're thinking of FOs as aggregators of users, there's also this targeting of those users with appropriate technology. So in my opinion, what we've been discussing and learning through this collaborative approach that AMEA provides us is an opportunity to target specific implementation approaches at those various segments of farmer organizations. So for example, in Nuru's work, and I showed some pictures of this throughout the slide, we target nascent and startup farmer organizations based on our mission to focus on the most marginal and vulnerable groups, specifically in rural communities. So that is our niche. That is where we focus, and those are the types of farm organizations, those startup or nascent businesses. And what we've learned is needed is that fundamental digital skills training is the crucial first step. And part of that is creating opportunities for engagement with digital technology that may be exclusive in language based on literacy or exclusive in language. For example, in Ethiopia, translating into Amharic and Amharic script is very challenging. but it also, there's another layer of language barrier based on local dialect as well. And you see that in many other countries, in Kenya as well. And so that opportunity to really target that nascent startup leadership of that business with digital skills training and learning becomes a crucial first step. And segmentation allows us to also say, this may not be necessary for advanced. There's no need to invest in that or have that stage in your project or in your approach. And so segmentation allows for the prioritization of resources to be employed, both in the digital adoption, but also in just broader engagement and business development service. And so that's how I think about it and why I think it's important in our work at Nuru and as a contributor to the AMEA network. I don't know, Marceline or Boniface, if you have anything you want to add to that question from your experiences.
I don't really have much, because I think my idea was from the perspective of investment, because one of the challenges that we mentioned there was the fear of failure. And if you follow up with most of this, where this fear is coming from, is probably that people took up a technology that either they didn't need or their capacity was not yet at that level. So segmentation also allows us to match capacities, the needs, and the technologies so that they take up what they would use and find efficiency in it. Thank you.
Just briefly also to add, you realize that also the segmentation also help because even their both technical, financial capacity, and even governance structures differs for each stage, and therefore that's why that's important. I think also just adding on the fear of failure is also where understanding the context is very important, because some of the failures come because of really not understand the context. You want to try to use a technology that really it does not fit your category. And even if you look at the recommendations, each category seems to be asking for something different. So that tells you that it's important to understand the different categorization. Thank you.
Yeah, you both bring up really good points. One of the things that it brought to my mind that I didn't just mention was what we realized from the study was there's a lot of overlap between the segments in terms of what technologies are appropriate. But there is a very differing need and that fear of failure, different experience with previous technologies that's similar within each segment category. And that becomes really important to the context. And then the other part of that context that you mentioned, Dr. Kuku, that's vital is, the digital infrastructure varies. And in most cases, you can also see that where there may be struggling businesses kind of trapped in that early growth stage, sometimes the problem isn't one of software or hardware or any technology, it's a problem of infrastructure access. And being able to advocate for that based on those contexts as well, and increasing the agency of those farm organization businesses or having them increasing it themselves, and feeling that sense of empowerment to speak out when they need something becomes an important aspect of bridging some of that digital infrastructure divide that exists, and finding an advocacy space as businesses in rural communities and specific municipalities in different countries. It's an interesting topic to consider. But yeah, segmentation is essential, I think is what we all agree.
Casey, I have one more question. And we have 5 people that have submitted answers to polls. So everyone, the poll is still open if you want to answer some of those questions. But the last question I'm seeing here is, what approaches work best to bridge the digital divide for very rural communities and also for including women?
I think we touched on a couple. I don't know, Marceline or Dr. Kuku, do you have anything?
Can the question be repeated? Can she repeat the question? Can she repeat the question?
Yes, I clicked out of it. Give me 1 second. Here it is. What approaches work best to bridge the digital divide for very rural communities and also for including women?
Okay. Okay. So I think it's generally, I think it's talk about one is inclusivity, and basically the digital divide is as a result of exclusivity. So number one, technology can also be exclusive. So for you to bring in the concept or the aspect of inclusivity, one, you need to understand the users. You need to understand who are these users of the technology. Because when you understand them, then you design a technology or recommend a technology that meets their capacity and also meets their addresses their pain points. So if you also apply technology or recommend it without actually understanding the users in terms of their capacity, in terms of their preference, in terms of their context, in terms of their priority pain points, then you are likely to not address the digital divide. So understanding the user is actually one of the approach that works. For example, we have had cases where a mobile application, a mobile app works for some category. We have cases where only SMS would work. We have cases where only call up IRVS or call center will work, or whatever technology you want to use. We have cases where you find that they need very simple technologies, not very complicated technologies. That can only come when you understand the users, categorize their pain points, and also know what is really more best work for them. So that approach works. The last thing I want to say is that for inclusivity around gender here, particularly about women, is intentional. Being intentional and embedding the technology in the intervention. So if you're not intentional in terms of being gender specific or being women specific focused, then you are likely to lose a great number of women because it's just not automatic that they will adopt or use the technology, because they're disadvantaged. We find where some cases where they don't have a study showed sometimes back that less women have digital tools or devices than men. Less women have access to internet than men. Sometimes culture comes in where men don't allow their women to use digital tools for many reasons. So it's about another approach is being intentional around women adoption and use of technology, particularly looking at those barriers, and also embedding the gender lens in the technology adoption or approach. So I would look at those three approaches work best. It will bridge the divide around the adoption, particularly around women. Back to you, Wesley, if you can add something. You are a gender expert. I know you'll be able to add more than what I've said.
I think, Dr. Kuku, I think you have done very well in terms of the bit on the gender. Maybe what I would just add, even one of the things that come out, particularly for me, that sometimes I'm also in the implementation and interacting, is many times we set out to develop these technologies without engaging the potential user. And for us, I think that was one of the reasons that we actually even decided to do the roadmap study, that we are able to really understand the context before we set on a journey to do this. So I think the studies around really understanding the context before you go on to develop the technology, I think also is an important aspect in the approaches.
Yeah, those are both really good points. And Marceline, you remind me that AMEA is a signatory, as well as some of our organizations are as well. I know NURU is to the Principles for Digital Development, which I've designed for the user as the primary principle. So it's a really important grounding point to make, that was part of the impetus for this local multi-stakeholder process that you outlined. Another, I think, important approach that's been highlighted today during the conference, and that also entered into our early stage thinking when we were developing this process and this roadmap idea for digital technology to reach farmer organizations, was this tendency towards bundling that's trending in the sector. And I think that becomes extremely important to, especially our agenda and approach. One of the things we have learned is that a farmer organization, like I said, can aggregate users, but having a bundled set of services that are cost effective and the cost can be spread across multiple users allows for that to be adopted more effectively, especially by, like Dr. Akuku said, not just the gender exclusion that may take place, but also the economic exclusion that may take place as well with access to these digital tools. So bundling plays a crucial role. So seeing that trend increase over the last 5 years is really important. And that's another thing that we're looking to ensure in the details of the roadmap is that we may not be identifying very specific bundled services in Kenya and saying you adopt this, but at least suggesting where they are available and they cross over segments in terms of service provision. Identifying bundled service provision through different delivery mechanisms or MNOs or whoever it may be becomes extremely important to cost effectiveness and adoption, and then that reach. And then another thing that came to mind as we're getting close to closing the session was at an implementation level. One of the experiences we have also had at Nuru is we partner with an ag tech company, that a social enterprise that's, I believe, at the conference this week, Ignitia, to provide weather intelligence services to farmers through feature phones in right now 2 countries, Nigeria and Burkina Faso. And we're also exploring the opportunity to scale in East Africa, which they've recently begun their scaling of their operations there and expanding. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but in short, feature phone, farmer gets a very simple SMS giving them 24, 48-hour, and 1-week weather forecasts that are targeted at a GPS location under a proprietary weather model that's more accurate than the international global weather models. Long story short, farmer gets the message. Sometimes they can't read the message, even if it's translated into local language. But if you're able to give guidance, to take that to the household and to have a discussion about it and to bring that information to a broader part of the household community, it increases dissemination, it increases access to that information, and it still leverages, again, the technology, both the hardware of the feature phone and the software that employs the SMS information from the weather model. It allows that to reach a broader group of individuals in a rural community without each individual necessarily needing the feature phone. So that coaching, that guidance provided by organizations that provide business development services or that implement different projects becomes really important to increasing the dissemination and access that people have, especially those that might be excluded for literacy, economic, or gender reasons. So it's just another thought that I had, and based on a project that we've been implementing in a few countries outside of Kenya. Courtney, do we have any other questions?
We are at time. We have one more question. If you can get it answered in 1 minute, we want to make sure we end on time because we have Jim Taylor's keynote coming up next. So Rachel asks, farmer organizations have traditionally been accustomed to handouts by NGOs, leading to collapse of introduced interventions at the end of projects. How do you manage to engage farmers without financial expectations? You have 60 seconds, Casey.
Rachel, Merceline, sure, we have some responses to that. We could do a whole nother session on that question. I will direct you towards some resources really quick, because that's, I think, the best thing I can do in 30 seconds. Very recently, and we can share some of these, you can reach out to me or Merceline in the conference platform, and we can give you the links if I don't have time to multitask. ISF Advisors recently published a report in partnership with AMEA and a number of other donors that looks at different BDS models, both, and in this exact question is disaggregated there through their data. So it's one report to go to. AMEA has done, part of what AMEA's agenda is to help improve the pay for business development service. So it's not just a contribution, or it's not just a free service that's provided and offsetting that. It's a very difficult concept to grasp in terms of that context being very specific to the need, and the willingness or the ability to pay on the part of the farm organization becomes a very important question in terms of how you deliver that. yes, it's a challenge. It's something we're talking about, and welcome you to the conversation. And there's a number of reports we can point you to that can help kind of give a much better explanation than I was able to give in 45 seconds.